Have you noticed yourself becoming more irritable lately? Less patient, more reactive, easily overwhelmed by everything? Maybe you find yourself snapping at your partner, feeling frustrated with your children, resenting colleagues, or becoming angry over everything which before never used to even bother you. And then the guilt arrives, because this isn't who you believe yourself to be. You've spent most of your life being the calm, reliable and supportive one, the one who keeps everything together. So why now does it feel as though the anger is just sitting beneath the surface? Your tolerance is at an all-time low. And if that's you, I want you to stay with me as I explain that anger isn't just a sign you're losing it. Instead, it's actually telling you something really important. Anger in midlife is very misunderstood, and I will cover these misconceptions and how this all materializes in midlife and what you can actually do to eradicate these and be kinder to yourself. I have experienced in my own midlife journey that I was carrying decades of unmet needs, unspoken truths, emotional exhaustion, and invisible responsibilities. And eventually, through that, your own body and your nervous system starts to scream at you and it protests, and that protest is anger. So let's explore why. So if you're new here, my name is Suzie and I'm a counsellor, therapist, and on this channel we explore the emotional realities of midlife, healing, relationships, anxiety, trauma, personal growth and reconnection with yourself. And if you've been feeling more angry, resentful, or emotionally reactive lately, I want you to know what often appears as anger is actually something much deeper. Anger is often a secondary emotion. One of the most important things I teach clients is that anger is rarely the first emotion. Psychologists often refer to anger as a secondary emotion. In other words, anger frequently sits on top of something else. Beneath anger often lies hurt, fear, shame, rejection, loneliness, powerlessness, grief, exhaustion. And think about it. When someone criticizes you, you may feel angry, but underneath that layer, you may be hurting. When someone ignores your boundaries, you may feel angry, but beneath that, you may be feeling unseen. When you're carrying everything for everyone else and nobody notices, the anger may actually be covering deep exhaustion and resentment. What many women discover in midlife is that emotions they have spent years suppressing begin demanding attention. The emotions haven't disappeared, they've simply been waiting. The good girl conditioning many women were taught. To understand midlife anger, we often have to travel back much further. Back into childhood, many women grew up receiving powerful messages about who they should be. So you've got to be nice, be helpful, don't upset people, don't be difficult, selfish, demanding, keep the peace, put others first. Psychology calls these introjected messages. These are beliefs absorbed from parents, caregivers, schools, cultures, and society that become internal rules. The problem is that many of these rules require us to disconnect from our authentic emotional experience. A child learns nice girls don't get angry, often becomes an adult who doesn't know how to express healthy anger. Instead, she suppresses it, she swallows it, rationalizes it, and explains it away until eventually it leaks out through irritability, resentment, anxiety, people-pleasing, or emotional burnout. And midlife often becomes the point where these old adaptations stop working. 3. Attachment wounds that follow us into adulthood. Attachment theory helps us understand another layer. Research originally developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth demonstrated how our early relationships shape emotional regulation throughout our life. When caregivers respond consistently and safely, children often develop secure attachment. But when caregivers are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, critical, and unpredictable, children adapt. These adaptations are brilliant survival strategies, but they can create difficulties later. For example, an anxious attachment style may lead to someone to become hypervigilant to rejection. An avoidant attachment style may result in suppressing emotional needs, and disorganized attachment style may create confusion around intimacy and safety. Many women reach midlife still operating from attachment patterns developed decades earlier. They continue prioritizing others, avoiding conflict, overfunctioning, seeking approval, abandoning their own needs. Eventually, anger emerges because a part of them is tired of adapting, performing, carrying emotional responsibility for everybody else. So 4, the science of emotional suppression. Here's where the science becomes fascinating. Research over many years has consistently shown that suppressing emotions does not eliminate them. Studies by psychologist James Gross found that emotional suppression often increases psychological stress responses. In simple terms, you may look calm on the outside, but internally, your body is still working hard. Your heart rate increases, stress hormones remain evaluated, the nervous system stays activated, and over decades, this creates wear and tear on the body. Many women have spent years suppressing anger because it felt unsafe to express. Then midlife arrives, stress accumulates, responsibilities increase, parent age and children need support, carers demand more, relationships become strained, and the emotional pressure cooker eventually reaches capacity. And suddenly, the anger appears stronger than ever. In reality, it may simply be decades of unprocessed emotion finally surfacing. 5. The nervous system can no longer carry what it once did. This is a huge piece that often gets missed. Midlife anger is not just psychological, it's physiological. Your nervous system has limits. For years, you may have pushed through stress by relying on adrenaline, or you just kept going, you stayed productive, you survived. But chronic activation eventually catches up. Research into stress physiology demonstrates that prolonged activation of the body's stress response can affect emotional regulation, mood, and resilience. When the nervous system becomes overloaded, small frustrations feel huge, noise becomes unbearable, interruptions feel absolutely overwhelming, patience decreases completely, and emotional tolerance shrinks. And you assume you're becoming unreasonable, but what actually is happening is the nervous system is just exhausted. The body is no longer willing to absorb endless stress without consequence. So 6, the hormone changes of perimenopause. We cannot discuss midlife anger without discussing hormones, because hormones absolutely matter. Throughout perimenopause and menopause, levels of estrogen and progesterone fluctuate significantly. These hormones do far more than regulate reproduction. They influence mood, sleep, memory, stress tolerance, emotional regulation, neurotransmitters, and estrogen has a relationship with serotonin, often called the feel-good neurotransmitter. Fluctuating estrogen levels can impact on that mood stability. Progesterone often has a calming effect on the nervous system, so when progesterone declines in midlife, women may experience increased anxiety, restlessness, and irritability. Research published by organisations such as the North American Menopause Society has shown that emotional symptoms can become particularly intense during the hormonal fluctuation of perimenopause. But here's something important. Hormones don't create your life circumstances. They amplify what is already there. If you've been overwhelmed for years, if you've ignored your needs for years, if you've carried emotional labour for decades, hormonal changes may reduce the buffer that once helped you to cope. Suddenly, everything you've been carrying becomes impossible to ignore. So 7, the invisible mental load. Okay, right, yes, I know, I've talked rather a lot about emotional invisible mental load, but I cannot express enough about how important this is. It is huge. It's everything we carry every day for everyone, including ourselves. But from an angry point of view, it's not anger because of one big event, but anger through having 10,000 small responsibilities. The appointments, the planning, remembering, organising, the emotional caregiving, the household management, the worrying, the anticipating, everyone's needs. Researchers increasingly refer to this as the invisible mental load. Much of this labour remains unseen and acknowledged. When people don't recognise the weight you're carrying, resentment naturally develops. As humans, we need support. We need recognition and partnership. And when those needs go unmet, for years, anger often emerges as a signal that something needs to change. So, 8. Anger can be a healthy emotion. This may surprise people, but anger itself is not the problem. Anger is information. Healthy anger tells us something matters, a boundary has been crossed, a need is unmet, something feels unfair, a value has been violated. The problem is not the anger. The problem is what we do with it. Some people explode, some people implode, some people go numb or withdraw. Healing involves learning to listen to the anger without being controlled by it, to ask, what is this anger trying to protect? What is it trying to tell me? What needs have I ignored? What boundaries have I abandoned? And what truth have I been afraid to speak? So 9. So many women experience a midlife awakening. So one of the most beautiful things I've witnessed in therapy is what happens when somebody finally starts listening to themselves. Midlife can feel messy, uncomfortable and disorientated, but it can also become a profound awakening. For the first time, many women begin asking, who am I? What do I want? What do I need? And what matters to me now? What am I no longer willing to tolerate? And the anger is often part of that awakening, because anger creates energy and energy creates change. Sometimes the anger is not there to destroy your life, it's there to help you reclaim it. So, if you've been feeling more angry lately, more reactive, more frustrated, more resentful, before judging yourself, get curious, because your anger may not be a character flaw. It may be a message from your nervous system, a message from your body, and a message from the younger version of you who learned to stay quiet, a message from the part of you that has been spending years putting everyone else first, and perhaps now that part of you is asking to finally be heard. If this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Have you noticed yourself becoming more angry or irritable in midlife? I'd genuinely love to hear from your experience. And if you're on a journey of healing, self-discovery and emotional well-being, I'd love for you to subscribe and join our growing community. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to authenticity and who you were before the world told you who you had to be. See you in the next video.